In June 1938, a comic book was released that would change the history of the medium as we know it. Action Comics #1 introduced Superman to the world. Created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Superman would go on to become the greatest superhero of all time, and be a staple for generations to come in comic books, merchandise, television and movies. Welcome to Average J's Movies and TV, the place where you can find all you want to know about movies and television. Today we are taking a look at the journey of the Man of Steel in the film industry, from his early black and white days to 2025, where he starred in the James Gunn epic. Put your capes on as we take a look at the history of Superman in movies. The first Superman appearance in 1938 was a great success, leading Superman to have his own monthly comic book before long. The books were a bestseller, and Superman was so popular that he was given his own radio show in 1940 titled The Adventures of Superman. Television did not become common in homes until the 1950s, so families would gather around their large radio sets and used the theater of the mind to experience Superman in all of his glory. The history of Superman in movies began in 1941 when the Fleischer Studios brought Superman to life in stunning full-color animation. Known simply as the Superman theatrical shorts, these cartoons were groundbreaking for their time. With fluid animation, rich Art Deco backgrounds, and a darker, more cinematic tone, they cost nearly twice as much to produce as typical shorts. The rumor is that the Fleischer Studio had no interest in making the Superman cartoons and gave an outrageous price, which to their surprise was accepted. The first episode, The Mad Scientist, set the tone with thrilling action and a Superman who literally leapt off the comic page. The series ran for 17 episodes, first under Fleischer, then Famous Studios, and inspired generations of animators and comic creators. In 1948, Superman made his live-action debut with Kirk Alyn in a 15-chapter movie serial titled Superman. This was the first time audiences saw the Man of Steel in the flesh, though many were disappointed that the flying scenes were still animated to save on budget. Alyn's performance captured Clark Kent's mild-mannered charm and Superman's heroism, and the serial was a hit. It was followed by a second 15-chapter adventure in 1950 called Atom Man vs. Superman, which pitted the hero against his arch-enemy Lex Luthor, played by Lyle Talbot. These serials played in theaters before feature films, hooking young fans week after week with cliffhanger endings. Then in 1951, a new Superman stepped into the cape. George Reeves, in the feature film Superman and the Mole Men. This low-budget movie told the story of strange underground creatures emerging from a drilling site, with Superman defending them from fearful townsfolk. Though modest in production, the film was important, and due to its financial success, it served as a pilot for a brand new television series, introducing Reeves' portrayal to audiences nationwide. The TV series was a hit, and ran until the death of George Reeves in 1959. A movie was produced about the controversial manner of Reeves' passing, titled Hollywoodland, and starred Ben Affleck as George Reeves, and Affleck even donned the Superman suit several years before playing The Dark Knight. It would be almost another 20 years before we saw the last Son of Krypton on the big screen again. Alexander Saul Kind and his son purchased the film rights to Superman in 1973 with dreams of turning Superman into an epic movie-going experience and make you believe that a man could fly. The producers hired The Godfather author Mario Puzo to write a massive 500-page script that covered both Superman the movie and its planned sequel. The script was eventually rewritten after Richard Donner was brought on board to direct. The plan was to shoot 2 movies simultaneously, but proved to be too much of a task and the budget concerns were mounting, so the focus shifted towards finishing the first movie. The film was released in December 1978. Superman the movie was a cinematic event, unlike anything audiences had ever seen. Backed by an all-star cast including Marlon Brando as Jor-El, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, and Margot Kidder as Lois Lane, the film promised something ambitious, a serious, big-budget superhero story told with heart, humor and spectacle. Reeves' debut as Superman is still considered one of the greatest superhero castings of all time. His ability to shift seamlessly between the bumbling, awkward Clark Kent and the confident, noble Superman was nothing short of remarkable. Superman the movie was a massive box office success, and the studio wanted to get right back to work on finishing the sequel, which was already mostly filmed. However, growing tensions between the producers and Richard Donner led to Donner being fired from the second film, and Richard Lester was brought on to finish the project. Lester was a director known for his work on A Hard Day's Night and The Three Musketeers. Lester had been involved as a consultant on the first film, so the producers saw him as a natural fit to take over. However, due to the Directors Guild rules, Lester needed to shoot at least 50% of the movie himself to receive sole credit. This meant reshooting large portions of the film Donner had already completed, rewriting dialogue, altering tone, and introducing more comedic elements. A legal dispute over his massive salary led to all of Marlon Brando's scenes being cut from the sequel's theatrical release. The heart of Superman 2 was its villains. General Zod, played brilliantly by Terrence Stamp, Ursa and Non, three Kryptonian criminals freed from the Phantom Zone after an explosion in space. The showdown in Metropolis was a technical marvel for its time. Wirework, miniature buildings, and optical effects created the illusion of godlike beings throwing cars, smashing buses, and flying through skyscrapers. It was the first time audiences saw Superman face a true physical threat on the big screen. Released in June 1980, Superman 2 was an instant hit. Critics praised its thrilling action, memorable villains, and Christopher Reeve's continued charm as the Man of Steel. While some fans preferred Donner's more serious style, audiences embraced the mix of drama and fun. The film grossed over $190 million worldwide, a massive number for the time, and cemented Superman as one of the most successful franchises of the early 1980s. It also kept Reeve firmly in the public's heart as the definitive Superman. After the massive successes of Superman the movie and Superman 2, fans expected the Man of Steel to keep soaring higher. But what followed were two sequels that marked a sharp turn for the franchise: Superman 3 and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Both were plagued by creative missteps, studio interference, and behind-the-scenes compromises that even Christopher Reeve himself struggled with. This is where Superman's cinematic fall from grace began. When Superman 3 arrived in 1983, it was clear right from the opening credits that this wasn't going to be like the previous films. Instead of epic heroics, the movie leaned heavily into slapstick comedy, and at the center of it all was Richard Pryor. This casting choice came from a single interview. Pryor, one of the biggest comedy stars in America at the time, had mentioned on The Tonight Show that he loved Superman the movie. The producers saw an opportunity and quickly built Superman 3 around him. Pryor played Gus Gorman, a bumbling computer genius roped into a villain's scheme to control the world's resources. But instead of being a side character, Pryor dominated the screen time, with Superman often feeling like a guest in his own movie. Still, Superman 3 did have one standout sequence. Superman's exposure to synthetic kryptonite turns him into a darker, more selfish version of himself. The surreal junkyard battle between the corrupted Superman and the pure-hearted Clark Kent remains a fan-favorite moment, showing Christopher Reeve's incredible range. The box office didn't meet the expectations and standards of the first two films, but it was about to get a whole lot worse. By the late 1980s, Christopher Reeve was reluctant to return as Superman. He felt the character had been creatively exhausted after the first two films, and he wanted to move on. Cannon Films, known for producing low-budget action movies, had acquired the rights to Superman. They offered Reeve a deal, star in Superman 4, and they would finance a movie of his choosing. Reeve agreed, using the opportunity to make Street Smart, a gritty drama he'd been trying to get off the ground for years. With Superman 4, Reeve also got to pitch the story. Superman decides to rid the world of nuclear weapons. It was an ambitious, timely concept, but the execution would be crippled by money problems. Cannon initially promised a $36 million budget, but as the company faced financial trouble, that was slashed to around $17 million, less than half. Massive sequences were cut, special effects were rushed, and recycled footage from previous films was used to save money. The movie's villain, Nuclear Man, was a creation by Lex Luthor who was being played by a returning Gene Hackman. The fight sequences between Superman and Nuclear Man were very wonky and poorly constructed and did not make the audience feel like this was a fight between two superpowered beings. When The Quest for Peace hit theaters in 1987, it was a disaster. Critics called it cheap and poorly made, and it flopped at the box office, earning only about $37 million worldwide. It effectively ended the Christopher Reeve Superman era. At the end of Superman 4, Superman says to Lex Luthor, "See you in 20." Who knew this would basically be true for Superman movies, as it was almost 20 years until the next time the Man of Steel would be on the big screen. Superman would go through many ups and downs after Superman 4. There were several projects that failed to launch, including Tim Burton's Superman Live starring Nicolas Cage as Superman. The initial script was written by Kevin Smith, who infamously stated the producer John Peters wanted to see Superman fight a giant spider in the third act. Coincidentally, in the Flash movie, a CGI Nicolas Cage was fighting a giant spider when Barry was in the Speed Force. The unmade movie itself is infamous and the topic of a fantastic documentary titled The Death of Superman Lives: What Happened by the Late John Schnepp. I highly recommend it. The Last Son of Krypton would finally return to the big screen in 2006. Directed by Bryan Singer, Superman Returns was a reverent throwback to the Richard Donner era. Singer cast Brandon Routh, chosen for his strong resemblance to Christopher Reeve, to evoke nostalgia without relying on past actors. Kevin Spacey played Lex Luthor, and archive footage of Marlon Brando was used to reprise Jor-El. It opened to $52.5 million domestically and went on to gross about $200 million in North America and $191 million internationally for a $391 million worldwide total haul. Critics had positive things to say about the film, including its emotional depth and visuals. The fans also seemed to enjoy the movie, although many complained about a lack of action. The steep decline in its second week and the absence of a compelling sequel setup led Warner Brothers to pivot away from continuing that timeline and go in a new direction. In 2013, Zack Snyder rebooted Superman with Man of Steel, casting Henry Cavill as a darker, more grounded Clark Kent Superman, and this was to be the starting point for the DCU, as Warner Brothers were trying to play catch-up to Marvel after the success of their cinematic universe. The film piggybacked off of the gritty style of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy and received mixed response. The overall belief was that Henry Cavill was a great choice to play Superman, but the story choices upset some fans, especially the ending. Cavill would reprise the role on 2 more occasions, once in the semi-sequel to Man of Steel, titled Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and again in the Justice League movie. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, directed by Zack Snyder, picked up after Man of Steel, showing a darker, more conflicted Superman played again by Henry Cavill. His godlike powers sparked fear, setting up a brutal confrontation with Ben Affleck's brooding Batman. While packed with spectacle, the film was criticized for its grim tone and a controversial Martha plot twist. Still, it set the stage for the Justice League and marked the first live-action appearance of DC's Trinity: Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Things would get messy from there with the troubled production of Justice League. Zack Snyder stepped away after a family tragedy, and Joss Whedon was brought in to finish the film. The tone shifted dramatically, and much of Cavill's performance was altered or reshot, infamously including CGI to remove his mustache. Superman was resurrected after his death at the hands of Doomsday to return and help the Justice League defeat Steppenwolf. But the film felt uneven and completely bombed financially, causing Warner Brothers to rethink their strategy with the superheroes under their banner moving forward. In 2025, DC Studios rebooted Superman once again under co-CEO and writer-director James Gunn. Henry Cavill was not asked to return for the project. Gunn revealed it was terrible having to replace him, explaining that Cavill's return had been announced at the ending of Black Adam and on Instagram just as Gunn and Peter Safran were closing their DC deal. Gunn said stepping away from Cavill was unfair and a total bummer, but he appreciated Cavill's professionalism, and remains open to working with him in future roles. The film, titled Superman, stars David Corenswet as a young Clark Kent and Nicholas Hoult cast as Lex Luthor. In the best casting decision, Gunn tapped Rachel Brosnahan to play Lois Lane, and Rachel completely knocked it out of the park. The movie reintroduces Clark Kent as a young reporter in Metropolis, already established as Superman but still learning how to balance his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. The film explores Superman's struggle to stay kind, hopeful, and morally grounded in a world that often values power over principle. It's a story about legacy, identity, and optimism, emphasizing that true strength comes from compassion, not dominance. Unlike darker past portrayals, this version embraces the classic spirit of Superman, and it was like seeing comic book pages come to life, while planting the seeds for a new DC cinematic universe. The film did excellent at the domestic box office, but did struggle overseas. Despite the worldwide box office struggles, Gunn remains optimistic. Recently, he hinted on social media that he's already writing the next Superman project and confirmed that Superman will play a major role in what likely becomes the next chapter of the DC universe. Only time will tell. Thank you for joining us. Please share this video with your friends and Superman fans. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on notifications to find out more fascinating facts about the world of movies and television. What was your Superman movie, and who was your favorite actor who portrayed the Man of Tomorrow? Let us know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, check out all of our other videos on the channel. We appreciate your support. If you have a movie or TV show that you are interested in learning more about, please leave it in the comments section below. Thank you all and be safe.